Hi, this is Daniel Burrus, and welcome to this live broadcast. I'm really excited to bring a special guest with me today, to share with you some insights. Because let's face it, during this time, doesn't matter where you are on the planet, we've got a lot of fear, we've got a lot of anxiety, we've got social isolation, we've got lack of supplies, we've got social distancing. We don't have as many fun things to do as we used to have, where we seem to have a lot of limits placed on us, and there's never been more uncertainty than there is right now. And if you've looked at your savings account, your stock portfolio, you're going, holy cow, you've got some fear. And some of us don't even have a savings account, don't even have a stock portfolio, and we've got even more fear because it's like, how are we going to survive this? There are people in food lines, holy cow. So I thought, look, let's rise above a lot of what's taking place, which is the politics on all sides. Let's rise above all of that and talk about the human condition, because regardless of what country you're in, we all have those kind of emotions. And I am excited today to bring a good friend I've known for over 30 years, Charlie Plum. And Charlie, there he is. Hi, Charlie. And Charlie is unique in helping us get through this because Charlie spent 2,103 days, I believe it is. By the way, if you want to do the math, that's almost 6 years. And he had extreme social distancing. By the way, it's called a cell because he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. He didn't have Netflix. He didn't have food delivery services and a limited menu. Look at him. He knows. He's laughing. He didn't have the ability to take walks outside. As a matter of fact, when he went outside his cell, what did he have? Beatings. You aren't getting regular beatings, by the way. He did. He didn't have toilet paper shortages because there was no toilet paper. As a matter of fact, you know what? There was no toilet. He was there for almost 6 years. And look, he's learned some things that can help me and then can help you. And things that you and I would not learn had we not spent almost 6 years in a situation like that. By the way, wasn't just Charlie in that situation. There are 590 other guys that was in that prison in Hanoi, the Hanoi Hilton, as they called it. And they got back. And you know what? I can tell you right now, I've known Charlie. We have a mutual friend, Jerry Coffey, who was a prisoner of war. I think he was in the cell next to you. I think I remember you telling me. Who's another. These guys are amazing people. I mean, Charlie's unbelievable. How did they rise rather than shrink down? How did they not just survive, but do really well? So we're going to have a little discussion of this right now, have him share some of that wisdom that can help us all. And then here's something else we're going to do. We're going to make sure we take your questions. But so please be putting your questions up. We're capturing those ahead of time. And then we're going to address those questions after we have a little chance to talk to each other. So Charlie, whoa, I mean, you've been through so much, and we've got all these people that are pent up and hunkered down. How did you get through that? And how do other people get through what we have now?
You've set me up perfectly, Dan. I appreciate you, and I appreciate these webinars that you've done. And you helped me, as a matter of fact, work through this thing as well, because there really are a lot of similarities between what I went through and what everybody's going through today. And yes, maybe it was a little more dramatic for me, and maybe physically I saw some more physical pain, but that really wasn't the issue at all. The issue was just the unknowing, this day after day after day, is when this ever going to end? When are we going to get back to normalcy in our lives? And that's what we're all looking at right now. And even as we emerge from this, what do you learn from this? I am convinced that adversity is a horrible thing to waste. We waste this time by blaming everybody and everything for our challenges. And when we do that, we give away control of our life. And I guarantee you, within the next month or year, when we go through this, we're all going to look back and blame COVID-19, because we lost money, we lost our job, or we had these terrible things happen because of the COVID. Well, interestingly enough, when I came home from Vietnam, first guy I ran into was a psychiatrist, okay? Well, the first thing he told me was the bad news. My wife had filed for divorce just 3 months prior to my coming home. And so, and then he told me, he said, you have the right to be bitter. You have the right to be bitter. And I said, I have the right to have diarrhea. but bitter, I have a choice. I choose not to be bitter. And he said to me, he said, if you don't show some human emotion because of the stress you have been through, you will eventually have a mental breakdown. And the longer you wait, the more difficult that breakdown is going to be. Well, that psychiatrist is long gone, and this is 47 years. I'm still waiting for the mental breakdown. So I guess my premise is this. First of all, we have a choice. You and I have a choice. The way we face the challenge. Okay, we may not be able to change the surrounding, the input into our life, but oh, by the way, we certainly have a choice in how we respond to that. And so, I know this sounds a little Pollyanna, and as a matter of fact, sometimes when I see people complaining about toilet paper, I kind of chuckle. I think that's so insignificant, and people don't like it when I chuckle about it. They're not having toilet paper. but it, it is true, is that we can learn from this experience.
Well, there's a comment you've made that's been really great, and that is, when everything is taken away from you, it's amazing how much you still have. And in other words, I remember you talking to me, and I'll let you share it, but talking about how, again, you didn't have entertainment, but you did. You reread books, you rewatched movies, you relived experiences. And by doing that, they became very real and very flushed. And see, most of us think, well, I don't know if I can remember that movie back there. Well, that's because you haven't really worked at it. It's kind of like a blind person can touch a bunch of bumps and read. How do they do that? Do they have a different finger? No, they developed it. What are we developing? So, you found a way to turn that adversity, which was extreme, into a learning experience, into a growth experience.
And we had no books, we had no TV, we had nothing. They wouldn't give us a pencil or a piece of paper. And yet we went through the books, we went through the college courses, we taught each other. And in fact, University of Maryland gave us credit when we came home for the courses we had learned from each other, without professors, without PowerPoints, without any of that. And one of the secrets of this whole thing, because we got very creative over there with our communication system and the way we taught each other. And what people don't understand is, when you have 24/7 with nothing to do, your senses are heightened. You memorize things, you see things, you hear things, you smell things that you didn't before, and suddenly you're a sponge, and it really works.
Well, another thing that's interesting is, let's talk about social distancing, which, by the way, I got a bone to pick with that name. I think it should be physical distancing, because we're social creatures. And I know that when you were in cells, and you were in cells by yourself, you all you found a way to be social, even though you had extreme physical distancing, because it wasn't like you were all in a big room together having a party. You used a tap code, and you tapped on the walls to send notes to each other and to communicate with each other. In other words, we find a way, don't we? And so you had those communications, and I think that was really important, because, in this world where we're all physically distancing, we are indeed still all connected, and it's time to reach out and touch someone in a significant way, and you don't have to do that by getting right next to them.
No question. And that code that we used was very cumbersome. It took forever just to get an idea across. But the key to the code and the key to communication in a prison camp, it was life-saving. It was life or death that we communicate with each other. And it's the same thing now. But it wasn't the words. It wasn't the sentences. It wasn't the top secret stuff. It was the simple validation of another human being. Because in those prison cells, when it was dark and when you were alone, solitary confinement, some guys were in solitary for 4.5 years, you lose track. You wouldn't know what's a real memory, what's a hallucination. You need a baseline. And I think you're absolutely. I love your term. And I've used it as a matter of fact because you told me this a couple of weeks ago. It's not. We don't want to be socially distant. We can be physically distant, but we still need to communicate. We need that validation, and you can do it in a lot of ways, 6 feet apart.
Yeah, there's something you just said that was really powerful. That it just happened yesterday. I was stalking a CEO that I had worked with their company a number of years ago. Haven't talked to him since. I gave a speech, did a little consulting, that was it, and then they went on and did their thing. And he reached out to talk to me, and he had some questions. And the very first thing I said was, first of all, how are you, and how's your family doing? Mm-hmm. First of all, why? Because I cared. But you see, we didn't get into why he was calling. We didn't get into business. We didn't get into all that stuff. Kind of like you're talking about. We're all humans in this on this spaceship Earth, as it's been referred to, and we're all really brothers and sisters if you get right down to it. And when we are inward, have those fears, when we're looking at how can we help others, how we can coach someone else, how that, now I'm guessing, I'm going to let you do a little better than me on this, but I'm guessing if there's that prisoner that is curled up in the fetal position in the corner and not doing well, your own fear tends to leave when you're trying to help them think through the situation they're in, because maybe you'd been in there for a year and they just got shot down. Now, I'm guessing. I'm going to now turn it over so I don't have to guess and let you talk about that a little bit.
You're absolutely right with your guess. It was vital, and it happened over and over because guys got depressed. Guys kind of gave up hope. And it was vital, that we take that guy and we bring him into the fold. And we found out that if a guy couldn't communicate with the rest of us or wouldn't communicate with the rest of us, he probably wasn't going to survive this. It was just vital that we bring them around. Now, one of the advantages we had, the prisoners of war, and one of the reasons we came back so healthy and happy and continue to live wonderful lives ourselves, was we knew the history of other wars. And in the Korean War, we lost about a third of the prisoners because they did just that. They just crawled over in a corner in a fetal position and atrophied and died. They just gave up. And we found that you're not going to lose until you give up. As long as you struggle with something, you're still in the game. And so struggle is positive because you're still there. You're still with it. And I see that in this experience too. Because people give up. People give up on their jobs. They give up on their family. They give up on life. And that's how you lose, is when you give up.
That's a really, really good stuff. And another thing that I know you and I have talked about over the years, and that is, I call it future view, and that is, your view of the future. And if it's dark and bleak, you tend to live that life. And so how you view the future, here's the principle. How you view the future shapes how you act in the present, and how you act in the present shapes your future. In other words, the future view will determine the future you. And I think I remember you saying the guys that curled up in the corner, and I remember talking to our mutual friend, Jerry Coffey, again, who was in prison with you. And I remember asking him one time, what's the difference between the guys that made it and the guys that didn't? Because some people did die there. And he said the ones that didn't make it said they can't take it, they can't make it. And they are the ones that stayed curled up in the corner. Again, their future view was, I can't take it. And they listened to themselves. So what are you saying to yourself right now if you've been unemployed, you don't have savings, and you don't even know how you're going to pay the rent? There are people that are like that. Or maybe you're a restaurant owner and it looks like you aren't even going to be able to reopen again. What do you do? And you curl up in the ball and squander, as Charlie would say, what was just handed to you? Or are you going to rise up and do something about it? So Charlie, you actually were thinking about your future, and you were seeing a future, a better future than you had in your present, and that helped you get through. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Absolutely. One of the things I did from the very beginning is to plan my future from the day I was released from prison for the next 20 years.
But you did this way before. During that 5 years you were doing that.
No, yeah, yeah. No, while I was in prison, I fast forward my mind, to that future view you're talking about. Now, when I came home, and it was all around my wife. Okay, in fact, I would play this, and when I didn't get home when I thought I was going to, I went back and played it a different way. I actually had 3 different options. Okay, for my future, 20 years. I knew every birthday. I knew every ornament on every Christmas tree for 20 years. Every meal, didn't have much rice in those plans.
And probably not since. Yeah.
But here's the deal. Okay, when I came home, none of that came true because my wife had gone. And all the preparation around her. Okay, but and in fact, people have told me this. They've asked this question. When I speak to an audience, and they'll come up afterwards and they say, "Don't you wish you'd known from the very beginning that your wife was not going to stay with you?" No, not at all. She kept me alive. It's that future view that I was living in my present. That allowed me to have hope. And
I remember you also saying that when your future view that kept you going was obviously changed, you didn't crawl up into a ball and reach over in the corner again. Rather, you created some new visions. And by the way, not all of it didn't happen. I do remember you telling me that you had a big stretch goal back then. Remember, you were a young guy. Heck, you were in your low 20s when you got shot down.
Yep.
And you thought to yourself, I'd like to be a commander of an aircraft carrier someday. By the way, that's a stretch. But I remember you saying that was one of your goals, and you did that.
I was reserve commander of Coral Sea for a while, and absolutely. I came back. I continued to fly jet fighters. Still fly 2 airplanes of my own, as a matter of fact. One's an experimental airplane. One's a World War II. In fact, you've been up in my experimental airplane.
I was just thinking the last time we were together, we were doing a barrel roll in your fantastic plane, and so you still fly all the time. And
yeah.
Well, again, you didn't become less; you became more. And it's there's a mutual friend of ours, name is W. Mitchell, and I remember he's had many tragedies. A number of them happened to him, and one of his great lines is, "It's not what happens to you; it's what you do about it." Because, both of us sail. We both like to get out on the water, and we've been sailing together even. And I can't control the weather, but I can control my craft. And I can't control the direction of the wind, but I can set my sail. As a matter of fact, if I can set my sail right, I can actually go in the direction the wind is coming from, which seems counterintuitive. So I don't look at the things I can't control. I look at what I can control. I don't look at the things that I can't do, which ain't much in a cell. I look at, what can I do? What can I think? And I think the real gift we were all given is what's right up here. That's where all of these great memories can be enriched. And then one other little comment I'll make, this is kind of an interesting thing that came to me when you're talking about thinking about your wife when you were in there. And that is, all the people that we know who are not with us right now. I don't know. For example, right now, there's no one else in this room. I'm talking to you. And I don't know if anybody else is actually alive or dead right now. I don't know that. For a fact, I only know who I can see, who's right here. Yet they're alive in my mind.
Yeah.
They're alive in my mind. So we can have things that are alive up here and real and powerful to us, whether they're even someone that we cared about that is indeed gone, or whether that's someone that we care about that we think is there and doing okay. It's so powerful up here. Let's tap into this a little more, especially during this time when our physical, tangible things seem to be in trouble.
It certainly worked in the prison camp. The first cell, roughly the average cell I was in, was 8 feet long and 8 feet wide. And I thought that was my limit, 8 by 8. But that wasn't the limitation. The limitation wasn't the 8 feet between the walls. It turned out to be the 8 inches between my ears. This is going to be a mental game. And my freedom really was how I escaped from my mental prison. And I think it's the same thing today. Yeah, we're restricted. Now we're in lockdown. Yeah, we can't do the things that we used to do. But there's still, the key, as you just said, is right here. It's in our brain.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the moment we're in. I think this is a defining moment for all of us. And, will we squander it? And as you kind of alluded to before, and I think we can use these challenges, these adversities. Actually, do we learn the most from our problems, or do we learn the most from our successes? I would venture that we learn the most from our problems, but sometimes we have problems and we don't ask ourselves, what did I learn? In other words, you can have a problem and not learn nothing. And I think right now we should be learning like crazy about all the things we're facing and all the challenges. And I think a lot of us think we just hit the pause button. Some of us are thinking, well, we want to hit the reset button right now. And what I would say is, well, then you're going to undershoot. I'd like to hit the transformation button. I would like you to take and look at how can we make our family, how can we make ourselves, how can we make our community, how can we make my business, how can I make my employees, how can I do things and make it even better when I get back, rather than try to get back to where they were, which frankly probably wasn't all that great in the first place.
An excellent opportunity to reinvent ourselves, and our families and our businesses and everything else. We take some time and imagine, the things that we've done in the past that we can improve, and we set our goals to improve those things. Now, to me, one of the things is you have to keep your core values. You don't want to let this experience ever change, your true north. You have that set of core values, and that has to be your baseline. Don't change those, but everything around them you can change.
I like your true north, and I like the values. Take a second. Tell me about those core values that help you. Because I know that there's, of course, honesty, integrity, delivering on promises, those kind of things. What were some of the keys to help you?
Trust, I think, is sort of the baseline of it all. You have to trust others. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust the system. You have to build that in. But when you find those challenges, I'm a big believer that if you can really understand and convince yourself that there's value within the challenge we're facing, and then make it a puzzle, make it, hey, I challenge myself to find what these advantages are, and putting together a jigsaw puzzle, and you have to work on it. And when I was first shot down, I said, there's no value to this. This will be a time in my life I'm going to try to forget. And then, I thought, well, okay, maybe there is some value. And if there is, then I'm going to find out what it is. And I spent nearly 6 years trying to figure out what the value of being a prisoner of war was. And I'm not the only one. As you mentioned, there are 591 of us. And they thought we'd be in baskets. They thought we'd be vegetables. They had our families briefed to institutionalize us the rest of our lives. And so far, we've produced 17 generals in the military, 7 admirals. Most of us retired as senior grade military officer. I retired as a Navy captain. We've got doctors and lawyers and preachers and teachers and speakers, and two United States senators, a vice presidential candidate, a presidential candidate, my old flight instructor, John McCain. And they're telling us we're healthier and happier today than if we hadn't been shot down. So there truly is advantage to this COVID crisis. And
another thing that I think helped you guys is, just to take a second, is I think when something happens to us that's bad, and bad things happen to good people, and I can't control that. I can only control how I react to it. But when we get into some tragedy or something happens to us, and then we go back to normal quickly, we usually don't really think about it. And we don't really take the time to learn from it. And I think one of the gifts, and when I say that, remember, both Charlie and I are not neglecting the human tragedy of the virus, and that people are dying and people are in hospitals and ventilators and all the healthcare workers, et cetera, et cetera. But the gift that's happened is it's giving us some time. This has been weeks now. This has been over a month. And actually in a way that can work for you instead of against you, because you're given this opportunity to have some time to grow from it, to think from it, to ask ourselves, how can I be a better mom, a better dad, a better brother, a better sister, a better employee, and a better employer. If we really not just think about it, but by thinking about it, you start working on it already. you can be all of those things.
And here, and I think that we are living proof of this. Here's a statistic for you. Nearly a third of all of the combatants in Vietnam had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The prisoners of war, 4% of us have that, and it's mostly the guys who were shot down late in the war and were not tortured, were only prisoners for a few weeks or a month or two. So your point, well taken, is that we need time. It's time that allows us to figure it out, to realize that that we can be better because of the experience.
Yeah, and when you're in fear, the best way to defeat fear is to think of how you can help others. When you start thinking about being of service to others, fear tends to drift away. And I see you're nodding in agreement with that. And one other comment I'll just make about something you said earlier, and then we have a couple of comments I want to get to.
Okay.
But all relationships that are good are based on trust. And I would say that trust is actually earned through values like honesty, integrity, living on promises. So trust is the centerpiece of a positive relationship. And by the way, you can elevate trust. What'll you do? You'll elevate your relationship. We should all be elevating our relationships. And that's done through the core values. And by the way, both you and I have had the pleasure of speaking and consulting all over the world. And I've been just about everywhere, it seems, although there's many places still to visit. It's a wonderful planet. But my point is, the values are the same. I mean, even with the people that we may consider our enemies, if you give it enough time, they may become our friends. And history actually shows that has happened. So, and why is that? Because we rise above the politics and get into the human condition. And when we get into the human condition, what do? Well, we cry, we laugh, we have hope that our kids will have a better life than us. I mean, look, it's the same all over the world. That's why we're all brothers and sisters anyway. And that's why it's such a thrill to have you and interview you. So I'm going to have you make another quick comment if you'd like to on that. And then there's a few questions. Let's take those questions. It's social media. We can't go too long on this or we're going to lose you all. I understand that. So Charlie, any comments before we take a few questions?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I went back to Vietnam just 4 years ago and met the camp commander, guy in charge of my torture. I met the other fighter pilots that I fought against in dogfights in there. And you're absolutely right. They're fathers and husbands and they just want the best for their country, just like I want the best for my country. And so we became friends. So enemies can become friends.
Well, yes. And let me just make a side comment to everyone. Holy cow. Did you hear what he just talked about? How many people have spent almost 6 years in a prison getting tortured and then actually go back and talk to the guy that shot you down, as well as meet the guy who was in charge of doing all that? I mean, would you even want to do that? Would you have the courage and the guts to do that? And more importantly than that, would you be curious enough to see what you could learn from that? And I don't know, that little thing you just said was not a little thing. I just wanted to point out, I think that was a big thing. And I don't know if I would have the courage to do what you did, but I would like to think so. And you know what? Hearing people like you is what inspires me to be better, because I want to be the better me tomorrow and the next day as well. And you guys, you helped me with that. So thank you, Charlie.
Dan, you would have made a great POW, especially with that.
No one's ever told me that. That's hilarious. Wow, I would have made a great POW. Well, let's hope I never learn.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's, that's too much. All right, let's take some questions. I'm going to have them at the bottom. All right. Scott Page, wow. Scott Page has one. There's always an upside and a downside. Suffering, there is always a gift if you look deeper. By the way, I know Scott Page. He was the saxophone player for Pink Floyd. So if you've ever heard Dark Side of the Moon and you like Dark Side of the Moon, which has killer sax on it, that's the guy right there. And I've heard him recently. He's killer. Anyway, thank you, Scott. How would you answer that? He's really stating a great comment here. There's always an upside to a downside, and I found opposites are true. You know, if something bad happens to you, something good happened. By the way, if something good happens to you, I like to look to see what bad happened because something did. Good to be aware of both. Talk to us about that.
No, I think he's absolutely right, Scott, and I appreciate the comment. And you're absolutely right. In an upside, in the down, that's exactly what we're talking about.
And I think the key to his comment there, because Scott's a wise guy, as you might guess, you got to look deep enough. The end of his comment is the key ingredient here. You know, I think a lot of us kind of look at things and we don't go deep. We stay shallow. And that's why we don't grow and we don't learn. And again, I think one of the things that was the gift you didn't realize as a POW being there for so long was you had a long time to go deep. So how long do you have, meaning the people listening to this, to go deep? And I'm going to suggest, well, the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Why don't you consider going a little deeper into these things? When you feel fear, when you feel anger, when you feel an emotion, why don't you explore that a little bit? And I've come to think that almost all of our limitations, all of those things, can all be found by looking in the mirror. I've even said someday I'm going to do this because, you know, I've given like 3,000 speeches around the world. I keep saying I'm going to do this someday. I'm going to have a mirror underneath everybody's chair. And when we're talking about, you want to know the biggest problem, pull that sucker out. You want to know why the competition is eating your lunch, pull that thing out. And
I have to steal that. That's a great concept. I may have to do that myself.
I know that. I just got to do that. I got to do that. All right, let's have another one. Thank you, Scott. Glad you could make it. How about another one? Glenn. Oh, Glenn. I've talked to Glenn before, and you know Glenn. So this is for you, Charlie. Thanks for sharing experiences with our mutual friends, Captain Ed Davis and Colonel Jim. You know those guys.
Yeah.
Why don't you? He's got a question. What was your most impactful moment in the POW camp? All right, go for it. And thanks, Glenn.
Ed Davis was an upperclassman when I was a plebe at the Naval Academy, and he used to harass me. But really, I mean, that's part of the game, part of the process. Part of the boot camp is to have somebody on your back. And I'll never forget. I was outside. I can't remember, chopping wood or something, and I had an opportunity to see over the wall. I pulled myself up on this wall, and I saw the devil. Okay, I mean, a red-faced, horned fire coming out, and it was Ed Davis. I fell back from that, okay, because I couldn't believe that I'd just come face to face with the devil. It was all just in my mind. It was all just kind of a fantasy thing. Well, then I moved in with Ed and became. He saved my life. He became a wonderful, wonderful friend, and was for many, many years. And so I have great memories. He is the guy, and some of you may remember that there was a POW that sneaked a puppy out of the prison camp.
I didn't read about that.
Yeah, and onto the airplane, and so there are pictures in, I don't know, Time and Life magazine of this POW coming home with a puppy. Well, he saved that puppy from the enemy having that puppy for dinner. That's what they did. They eat these things, and so he saved this puppy. But that's Ed Davis, great guy. That's Jim Hippner as well.
Thank you, Glenn. And let's. How about another one? We have another one. We got somebody at your house. What do we got here? A comment rather than a question. Have you seen the film The Railwayman? A story of a British POW. Do you know that film?
I do not. I've not seen that. But
who came to forgive and become friends with his torturer. And I remember a comment, and I want you to comment to that and mine. And that is, I remember both you, and on a separate time when I was talking to our mutual friend Jerry, who was in the prison camp, I've heard you both say that at first, you were upset and why me and all those things that happen when something first happens to you. But over time, while you were there, you were feeling sorry for the guards because you knew you were going to get out of there and they were still going to be there.
Yeah.
Talk to us about his comment and about that a little bit.
I'm really glad, Arby, that you came up with the forgiveness issue, because that was vital. My mother was a saint, and all the years I was with my mom, I never heard her complain about anybody else. She never pointed fingers. She was just that way, and she taught me that forgiveness as I grew up. And I found that that was vital in the prison camp, is to learn to forgive, not necessarily because it's a Christian principle, but because it cleanses you when you forgive. You get that acid out of your system. And I believe that to be true today. I try to live my life, forgiving not just other people who may have, harmed me, but to forgive myself for the mistakes that I make. So
yeah, that's really good. I love it.
I'll look at that film, the Railwayman, because it sounds like that. There's a lot of a lesson to be learned there.
There's a great line that I'm remembering reading years ago. That's great, and that is, forgiveness sets you free, because you're trapped yourself, and so forgiveness will indeed set you free. And then another thing is that I think there's a little invisible judge sitting on our shoulder, whispering in our ear all the time, having us judge all these things. And judgment is another thing that keeps you from seeing truth. Judgment can keep you from meeting amazing people and discovering what's really in there. So, it's hard because we all judge. I mean, it's a difficult thing. We got that little thing in there whispering, but, forgiveness sets you free. And I think judgment can free you to see things that are currently invisible. And when they become visible, you'll be amazed at the bigger, wider view. So judgment and forgiveness are keys. How about another one? Is there another one we have? Michael, great attitude he shares. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's use the word attitude for a second. I think attitude is key. Talk about what's your view on attitude?
You and I are both pilots, or we have been pilots, and there's an instrument in the middle of the pilot panel called the attitude gyro. It tells you you're going up or down, up or down. And I think it's true in life. Everything you do, every transaction you make in life is either going up or you're going down, depending on your attitude toward that experience. And it's the same thing here. You can be positive about this, you can be negative about this. And it's so much easier to live a life of positivity and not negativism.
Yeah, well, having started 6 businesses myself, one thing that I've learned is I would rather hire attitude. I can teach competencies later.
Yeah.
If you get, it's all, it's all about mindset. That's what you've been saying this whole time. That's what Michael's comment is about. It's about what's going on up here. And you know what? You can expand that. If you think, well, I'm stuck with the way I am who I am, then you're frozen in time. But if you accept, I know I can be better, and not only just can I be better, I'm working at it. Actually, I'll just tell you all right now, I'm looking forward to being 90, 95, 100. Boy, I'm working at getting better at everything. Hey, I might actually have more of my act together by then. So, you know what I mean?
I see this in kids. I try to speak at least once a month to the youth, a gratis presentation that I'll make to Boy Scouts or a school or somewhere. And I see kids that fall into this thing where they, like I said, well, I'm not very pretty, and I didn't have a date to the prom, and we didn't graduate this year, and woe is me. And they put themselves into this sinking spot. Their airplane is going down just because of their attitude, but just because they can't break free from believing of themselves as being a failure. I'll tell you this: when I was first shot down, I thought I was a failure. Well, I was a failure. I not only had been, my airplane was destroyed. I was a prisoner of war. I had not accomplished my mission. I just felt miserable about that. And then, back to social distancing. We didn't social distance, we physically distanced, and the guys brought me around and said, hey, pull up your big boy pants, we got a war to fight. It changed the whole attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's just it. Let's see if we got by the way, before we go any further, let me mention that Charlie has got some great words of wisdom, some other things you can find by going to charlieplum.com. There it is. Thank you. Definitely go and do that. And another one I've got from some open webinars that I did recently. I have Charlie and a number of other resources that I'm giving away. If you go to burrus.com/hope, you'll find a bunch of free resources. So I'm not selling you anything. We're just trying to give you some things. And let's have another question. I think we got one in there. There we got from Dave. Nelson Mandela also showed a remarkable attitude in 27 years in South African prison. Let's see. He also went back to prison and met and forgave his guards and tormentors. I had forgotten about that, Dave. Thank you for reminding me of that. I think, it's such a wonderful thing. See, you know what we're really talking about with Mandela and you, Charlie? We're talking character. And, the character is a powerful thing to have. And I think in our lives, we can hone that a little bit. And or not. Again, we have choices. How about another question? Because that was more of a comment. All right, what do we have here? How would you compare the who packs your parachute concept to today? Let's see, COVID-19, I'm learning to pack my own parachute. So obviously, I know Charlie tells a story about packing a parachute. Give us a little bit of that story, because obviously this is somebody who knows Charlie's story. And then I'll let you answer it. So again, we don't have a lot of time, so we got to keep it short, but go for it.
Here's a condensed version. Okay. Well, after I came home from several years after I came home from Vietnam, I ran into the guy who was the rigger, the parachute rigger in the bowels of that aircraft carrier that had packed the parachute that saved my life. And of course I was, I was very, very thankful to him. But his point was, hey, I'm not the only guy that packed your parachute. You survived because you had a mom that taught you forgiveness. You had a dad that taught you discipline. You had a coach, that said you could do anything you set your mind to do. Those folks packed your psychological parachute, your mental parachute, your spiritual parachute, and they are as important in your life as I was. So that metaphor I use in my speeches is that, hey, who packs your parachute, and how's your parachute packed? And then who looks to you for that kind of help in time of need?
So her first question there then is, with that background, who packs your parachute today? So it said, how would you compare the who packs your parachute to today? What do people do to find that concept and apply it during this COVID crisis we have now?
And have you thanked them lately for packing that parachute? And my parachute is packed by my wonderful wife, 4 kids, and 4 grandkids. I think family is a great place to go get your parachute packed. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, old pals like you, Dan, you pack my parachute daily.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think, again, not just physical distancing, yes, social distancing, no. It was just a couple of days ago, I reached out to an old professor friend of mine who's now in his late 80s. I'm making sure he's doing okay, and because he was one of those parachute packers for me long ago. We all have them if we think about them. And if you haven't reached out to some of those people that made a difference in your life, why don't you think about it? And again, I give a lot of speeches. Actually, I've gone back and given speeches at every elementary school, junior high school, college I ever went to, and have done all kinds of things because all of those had little parachute packs in them as well. All right, how about another one? All right, Carrie. Charlie, thank you for your service. Outstanding role model for us all. Absolutely. And thank you again for all of the people that have put their lives on the line, not only in military service, but of course today we've got our first responders, we got our police, we got fire, we got healthcare workers. Wow, it's an extended list of all of those people that are doing it for all of us. And again, if they can do it for us, maybe I can do something for them, which means who are them? Them is everyone.
I think another wonderful outcome of the crisis that we're in is that we're seeing an awful lot of people, volunteering to go to the hospital, taking food to the elderly. Without the crisis, we wouldn't see such meaningful society. We wouldn't be able to see that if we didn't have the crisis.
Yeah, I think something I've observed over the many decades I've been on this planet Earth is that when things are at their worst, people are at their best. And I've seen that over and over and over again. But what I would love for us to do as we hit the transform button rather than the reset button is maybe we can continue on being at our best a little longer than we normally do, because one absolute certainty is the pandemic will end. And, can we be better on the other side?
It's a hard trend.
That is a hard one. Thank you. See, you've been paying attention too. That's a future fact. Absolutely. All right. We're going to do just a few more, and then we're going to let you all go. This has been a great experience for me. I hope it has been for all of you. Let's take another question or two, and then we'll go. Catherine Crawford. Oh, she's a great friend. Great to see you both. Well, thank you so much, and I know you do quite a bit in helping others and doing not just an inward view of yourself, but I know you and many of the others that are on this are also looking outward and looking at how we can help others. How about another one? Thank you, Catherine. Joyce, another person I know. So true, Dan. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. How about another one that we have in there? These are all really good people, I know. Glenn, 25-year reunion of your release. Did you attend that reunion? He and his friend Ed told him about it. Any comments?
It was a fun reunion. Half of the hotel was ex-POWs. The other half was a society of the disabled. Okay, a lot of people roll around in wheelchairs. The press showed up and they thought that the wheelchairs were the POWs. Okay, and of course we didn't tell them any different. You know, question, you need to ask that guy in the wheelchair.
That is funny. That's funny. Well, and I think ceremony is an important part of our lives, and getting together and celebrating, and really, what is we talking about? It's all about relationships and about growing those relationships. All right, I just got to take another one or two. How about another one? Let's see what we got here. Carrie, whoa, she is amazing. Holy cow, what do we got? Do you still go to Pensacola yearly for the POW study? And by the way, do you know Carrie at all?
It doesn't ring a bell, Carrie.
She is a female fighter pilot, aircraft carrier. She is another a sister out there. All right. Go ahead.
Answer, yes, I go every year. It's they started this thing when we first came home, 47 years ago. And that's, in fact, that's where the statistic comes, because they set a control group of fighter pilots that weren't shot down against the ex-POWs. And they had tracked us for 47 years. And yes, I go down there every year. They come over every cell in my body, and it's a mental and physical exam. And it's always, it's really a pretty good deal for us, because it validates the fact that we did not only survive, that we thrived through and because of that experience.
Yeah, and Charlie, later take a look at, Google her name. I think you'd get a kick out of her background. It's pretty amazing. You have more in common than you realize. All right, how about another one? They're back to Scott again. It's all about learning to surrender to what is, because it has happened. You can't change it. Trying to change it is a futile exercise. Exactly. I mean, you couldn't change the fact that you were in jail. We can't change the fact that your restaurant might be closed. You can't change the fact. So when I have things that I can't do, I can't change, I look at, what can I change? Again, that's that opposite. There's always another side to everything. I like to look at both those sides. Instead of, here's the list of things I can't do, what can you do? Here's a list of things I'm not certain about. Well, what are you certain about? Nothing other than debts and taxes. And as Charlie pointed out, the pandemic will end. By the way, when the pandemic ends, what will you be remembered for? Maybe you better be thinking about that now. And as a matter of fact, one other little strategy I'll give you, and very quickly, and that is post-pandemic success will be determined by what you do now, not what you do post-pandemic. So if you got a wait and see attitude, you're already blowing your time. You should be doing far more. All right, boy, we are really going long for social media, but we've got a few. Let's see if there's another one. Let's just try another one.
All right,
Stephen. All right, how can we be? How can we be of help for the nurses, medical staff that will be dealing with potential PSD? And by the way, yeah, it's not just potential. There's going to be some of that. It's already happening. When the crisis is over. So how can we be of help? And we meaning all of us. Charlie, what would you say to that? Because PTSD is a real thing, post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yes, and it is a real thing, as a matter of fact. But I also believe that it is also a decision that we make. It's like everything else. It takes time to recover from this, but oh, by the way, we can recover and be even better because of it. But what do we do specifically? I think the things we've been talking about: reach out, touch them, thank them, ask them how we can help them, and ask them how they're feeling. The worst thing would be to ignore these people, because they have served us so well, and to ignore them, to put them in their own little isolation makes that PTSD worse. So I think just reach out and touching them is the best we can do.
I also want to just point out that when things happen to someone that's really bad, really horrible, and horrible things do happen to people, and they do have post-traumatic stress syndrome, it isn't like if they're having trouble dealing with it and recovering from it, it doesn't mean that they're less than or they have something missing personally. These things take time, but during that time, the wound is fresh, it's bleeding. Time will help. It will start healing and scabbing over. It'll always be a wound. You'll always remember. It'll always be there. But I think, there again, are we trying to learn from it? Are we getting counseling? Are we getting help? Or are we just by ourselves? And even if let's say you're a small business owner that had to close down, and it looks like you don't even know if you'll be able to reopen again. You had to lay people off. Maybe you should be talking to some other people that have gone through the same thing. Actually, that's where social media might even be able to help in. You might be able to find other people that experienced what you have to be able to share, kind of like happened in the prison camp when you were there for so long. You were able to do some sharing with others in the same situation. And I think that can help you, I'm guessing. Now, I'm not going to guess anymore. I'm going to let you tell me.
No, absolutely. It's very true. We've come up with a new term. Well, it's not new, 25 years old. It's called PTG, post-traumatic growth. Okay, and there are a couple of psychiatrists, psychologists, actually, that have put this together. And if you're really interested, Google PTG, post-traumatic growth. We, the XPOWs, are sort of the poster boys for this effort that you can actually grow because of the stressful situation that you've been through.
Yep. All right, we're coming up on the top of the hour. I think I'll do one more, and this is it now. One more, and then I think I'm going to let everybody go back to what they're doing. What do we got? Whoa, big one. All right, Charlie, this is for you. First of all, your experience, when I introduced the webinar about a month ago, story was inspirational. Told everyone else we're listening to, 6 years, get through this. What have they got? Truly, your pack parachute. Oh, absolutely. So this is a big thank you is what she's got here. And so let me end with hers and let you all get back. But, again, I ride a Harley Davidson motorcycle because there's no reverse. In other words, you can never go back. You can only go forward. And let's make forward better than back. And Charlie, thank you so much for sharing your amazing wisdom with us and just giving us some things to think about to help us make tomorrow even better than today. And thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you again. We'll do more of these. All right. Take care and stay safe.